people think that any kind of social welfare work, building bridges and cutting roads and planting trees, they are all karma yoga. Nothing of the kind. They are all charitable works. They have got great value, virtue. They may even go to heaven of Indra due to this great sacrifice they have made towards the welfare of public. But that is not yoga. Because you have done this wonderful work of philanthropy in a field which is not your property. And you have stood already behind the action as a doer thereof. The action did not emanate from your existence. It emanated from the force generated by your hands and feet. It is difficult to understand how you can be present in an action. I can only explain this by an analogy. The waves of the ocean dash with great ferocity one over the other. You can call it an action of the ocean. But the waves are the ocean. The waves are not moving in another outside field external to the ocean. The whole activity of the waves and ripples, etc., is within the very existence of the ocean itself. So existence is action, which is something difficult to hear and understand. Can existence itself be action? The sun is shining. You cannot say the sun is inactive. But the sun does not work with hands and feet, with limbs, instruments, spade and shovel and all that. The very existence of the sun is the greatest of activity taking place in the world. Such tremendous activity is taking place in the very body of the sun that the earth cannot live without that activity. We will simply shiver and perish in 3 days if the sun is not going to be active. We simply glibly say, what is there? Sun is shining. It is not merely that sun shines. He is entering into the very fiber of creation as the very soul thereof. The Veda says, Surya Atma Jagatas Tathurascha. The Surya Bhagavan, he is not standing high above 93 millions of miles away. He is the soul of the entire creation. The presence of the sun can be felt by even the tiniest of an atom, though wrongly you may imagine that there is a distance between the two. There is no such distance. By the way, if your extended self in its larger dimension can become the field of activity, it is karma yoga. What does it mean? You are now 5.5 feet tall, 6 foot tall, 2.5 feet wide. This is all your dimension. Now can you widen your consciousness to the area of your performance? If you are working in a whole district or a whole state or entire country, let your consciousness spread itself like the waters of the flood or the surging of the ocean entering into the body of the earth. Feel that you are melting yourself and flooding the whole ground. And on that ground where your consciousness is shining as the pure existence is the field of action. and who is doing the action. That itself is doing the action, the consciousness. Because the field of action itself has become consciousness. You yourself are moving within yourself. The mind cannot understand these things as our sense organs are empirically bound and we have a hard core of personality which does not want you even to hear these things. It says you close your mouth, don't talk. You are doing very good work. However, this was the main theme of my first session. Anything that you do can liberate you. No action can bind you. Otherwise, why do you call it yoga of karma? It liberates you because you yourself are moving within yourself. Then I mentioned to you certain psychological aspects of yoga, the general perceptions and the abnormal perceptions. How we come to know that there are things outside by an externalization of consciousness through the sense organs, and how we get emotionally stirred up and then find ourselves bound in a mysterious way, the meaning of which we cannot understand. Now I don't go further along this line because I am here coming for one day in a week. I want to go directly to the subject which is going to free you from turmoil, namely the direct action of meditation. All success in life, whatever it be, is the result of concentration of consciousness. If activity, as to repeat what I said, is outside the consciousness, it cannot yield any fruit. People cry, so much I have done, nobody is grateful to me. I quit this world without even a thanks from people. Why should they thank you? Because you have not done anything. You have only moved your fingers and spread the instruments of action outside, and you stood apart from what you did. Therefore, a person who stands apart from what has been done cannot reach the benefits of that action. Meditation is also an activity of consciousness. You may think that meditation means intensely being conscious of some object. By object, you mean something that is standing in front of you, looking outside you, standing or sitting, etc. You cannot be benefited by anything that is standing outside. It is like the lot of money that is in the Reserve Bank of India. It is there, but what does it matter to you? You are not going to get anything out of it. Even if you are the governor of the Reserve Bank, you cannot touch that money. You are sitting on it, but it is not yours. Likewise is this great object of meditation. It will enamor you, enchant you. So much great, large treasure is there in front of me, but that treasure will elude your grasp because it is not under your control. You cannot control anything in this world because it exists in its own capacity as you exist. You are existing as an individual, the object also existing as an individual. How can it become a part of yourself? Can you become a part of myself or myself become a part of yourself? We are independent totally, and I can go this way, you can go that way. The object will say that. The Upanishad, the Brihadaranyaka, in a great passage of sage Yajnavalkya says, Sarvam tam paradat yaha anyatra atmanaha sarvam veda. Everything will run away from you if you consider that thing as totally outside you. Objects fear you because they feel that you are going to convert them into servants for your personal satisfaction. You want to make the object a slave so that you may possess it and eat it. No servant will tolerate this attitude of a boss. Even a little servant in your kitchen room will not like to be called a satellite. He is an independent person and he has his own soul and he has his own ijjat and prestige. If you touch the prestige of even a servant, he will revolt against you. Now, every object has an ijjat. It cannot become your property. It is a means according to your idea about it. You want to utilize the object for some purpose which is external to the object. There cannot be a worse attitude that you can develop towards anything. Can I use you as an instrument for some purpose which is mine and I simply ignore you afterwards? No, the object has eyes to see. Every particle of the universe has eyes everywhere. All eyes, everywhere eyes. They can see what you are thinking. Philosophers tell us there is something called prehension apart from apprehension. Even a crawling snake can know what you are thinking about it. You may think that it is a stupid thing. No, nothing. Even a tree can know what you are thinking about it. If suppose you say tomorrow I shall cut off this tree, it will know this gentleman has told like that. It will vibrate like this when you go near it. Sir Jagadish Chandra Bose has done great research in this plant field and they discovered there is life even in a leaf. And they understand as anybody else understands, only better than a human being understands. Even a dog and a cat has better sense sometimes than a human being because they have less egoism. Human beings have greater egoism. So, the utilitarian attitude that we are developing towards the object of meditation will be resented by it. It will escape your notice. Nothing will come to you. What will come to you? Yourself will come to you. You will take yourself when you go. But that so-called thing which you regard as an object, if it can also become part of your own self, then it will come with you. Everything is considered finally as an end in itself. Nothing is a means in this world. As I mentioned to you, everything has subsisted and existed. It is pure being. Therefore, being as such cannot become an instrument of some other being. There cannot be two beings. Being is one only. If you want to abolish the distance between yourself and another thing, the being in you has to merge in the being that is inside, potentially, in the so-called externalized object. It is the name and the formation of the object which distinguishes itself from the name and formation of your personality. One wave is different from the other wave in the ocean. You can count them. But at the root, there is the existence of all the waves which controls the movement of everything. The existence is common to all the waves. So there is an existence pervading fundamentally behind every subject and every object. So that you may say basically the distinction between subject and object is redundant and unwarranted. This is why you like to have a thing and yet you cannot have it. The wanting a thing is due to the basic connection that exists between the two existences. Therefore, frantically you run after something, I want it. But you cannot get it because of the separation of the name and form of the object from your name and form. So all desires become frustrations in this world. Provided you are able to know that what you are expecting from the object is its existence, not the name and form, then it will melt into the very form of it and enter into you. When you meditate on the object, actually you should not use the word object. It is a misnomer. It is an ideal before you. When you contemplate an ideal which you call the object of meditation wrongly, you have to see that it is not standing outside you. That which has been absorbed into yourself can give you strength, like the diet or food that you eat. The diet has to get absorbed into the very bloodstream of your personality, then you feel energy. Suppose the food goes out as it came, it will not help you and you will not feel any strength. To mention to you, I may say, you have not only to think that ideal, you have to actually bathe yourself in that ideal. The whole object ideal that is before you as your concentration point should get liquefied as it were, and pour itself on you. Patanjali in one of his sutras uses a word called dharma megha, the rain cloud of righteousness or virtue. At one point, the rain cloud will pour showers on you, the waters of nectar, of which the object so-called is constituted. If the objects were not made of nectar, you would not love them. And where is the nectar? It is the very honey which constitutes the form of that object. Just as you love your own self, because you are the honey of the self inside you. Why do you love your own self as the best of all things? Nobody like you. You think this is the best of things. It must survive under any circumstance. Why? Because most beloved thing is inside you. That most beloved thing is there also. So let that beloved become one with this beloved, not as two partners, but nectarine communion of two tanks of water, as it were, where you do not know which flows into another, which other one. This analogy also is given in Patanjali. Meditation is the flow of consciousness towards the object and the reverse process of the flow of the consciousness of the object into you, like the movement of waters of two tanks on an equal level. They will move this way, that way. You do not know which one is moving in what direction. Then you will not know whether the object is meditating upon you or you are meditating upon it. It wants you as much as you want it. Why is it so? Because it is also a self like you. You have forgotten that it has the root of potential selfhood, and you are wrongly considered it as a utilitarian instrument, nothing of the kind. Just as you would not like to be used as an instrument of somebody, any object also will not like it. It will resent and your grasp, it will run away. Nobody can get anything in this world, money, name, property, land, whatever it is, everything will be a bereavement because you consider it as something outside. You go like beggars, as we came from the world of other poor that we are, as we are born, poor that we will be going out, and rich we appear in the middle. No, this should not be the case. Rich as you are, you come, and rich as you go, and rich as you be, rich with potentiality of perfection. So, you must be very clear about what you want when you are starting meditation. You want utter infinitude of perfection. This is what you want. The endless, infinite expanse is what you are wanting. You are struggling inside with the so-called finitude of your existence. How poor I am, a little being, unwanted by people. There are so many others. Am I one of them? What is the use of this existence? There is a desire inside to control everybody else. and make them your own. So that wrongly you imagine by exercising authority on others, they become you. No, they cannot become you. They will only socially cooperate with you, but they can socially separate yourself from others. The necessity to understand the connection between what you want and yourself is very important. Finite things cannot satisfy you. A little blessing is not sufficient. You want large blessing, endless blessing, unending blessing. Even if you have the whole earth under your control, you will want the skies and the stars. What is the good of this little earth? Perishable is this world, perishable is this body. All this possession, all that you have, you thought that you obtained will go one day. You want imperishability, not merely infinitude. Infinitude is the negation of spatial distance, and perpetual existence is the negation of the time process which limits everybody to some period of time. Nobody wants to live merely for a period of time. It must be long. Why should I perish? I want to continue. But continue not like a little worm, but like an expanded being. So you want to continue endlessly defying the controlling power of time process, but at the same time you do not want to continue like a little creeper located only in one place, but an expanded being. Infinitude and eternity coalesce together in the aspiration for the Almighty God, Supreme Being. That which you call the absolute Brahman consciousness, whatever it is the blend of eternity and infinity. Spaceless infinitude and timeless persistence. This is God's nature. This is what you are asking for. These little things on which you are meditating or concentrating upon in meditation are representations of this infinitude. Every finite is a potential infinite. Because the whole ocean is behind every wave, as I mentioned to you. Let there be millions and millions of little ripples, but the infinite ocean is at the back. So is the case. You can concentrate on anything in this world, just as you can concentrate your mind on any wave, it is equal to concentrating on the whole ocean itself. If you have touched the waters in Bombay shore, you have touched the waters of New York at the same time. They are not distant. They are one body only. Likewise, if you touch the body of a particular object, you have touched the whole cosmos. Just as when you touch a little toe of your body, you have touched the whole body. The entire body will know that you have touched a little finger or a toe. The whole universe is one big body, an organism, a living being by itself, in which you are also included. So it is all vibration of life everywhere taking place. Dead matter never exists. So you are not thinking that I am meditating on an idol, a murti, a photograph, a diagram. Don't think like that. They are all geometrical patterns, name form complexes of a basic, ubiquitous, perpetual vibration of the center of the cosmos. Even the littlest of things is the body of that universal being. There is a science called Rasayana Shastra, where they convert matter into a powerful potential remedy by rubbing it, pounding it, making it fine. The idea is the cosmic dust that was prior to the Big Bang is present even now in the little sand particles of the bank of rivers. Oh, get a wonder to hear all these things. The whole world is made up of that so-called cosmic dust. Actually, it is not a dust. We have no word to explain, so the scientists call it dust. It is a vibratory quantum of center which they say in a most mysterious way expanded itself into the space-time world that we see. But who expanded itself? That which existed prior to this so-called creative action of Big Bang, I am mentioning the modern language, that exists even after that. So that even here it is, that which was prior to the occurrence of the Big Bang is here under your nose, and your nose is made up of that. So you are made of cosmic stuff. Oh wonder, I am made of cosmic stuff. I thought I am a little baby of this mother and that father. Nothing of the kind. All these mothers and fathers are all made of the same cosmic dust. If you pound yourself, you will find that center coming out. And the modern discovery is fantastic. Even now we are in the same place where we were prior to the Big Bang. Oh, what is this? You will tell me. Millions and millions and millions of light years of life has passed away, and you are saying even now we are in the same place where we were earlier. Because there is no distance for this cosmic action. Can you imagine this, that you are transported to that place? The distanceless operation defies your feeling of a long, long passage of time that elapsed after that activity till now. Remember what I said. Even just now you are living in the very same point where you were before the Big Bang took place. This is the eternity that is parading in you. And this is the infinity also that is pervading. Whole thing is inside. Everything is everywhere. What a wonder. You are a wonderful person. Don't think you are a foolish individual, niggard and unwanted, nothing of the kind. The whole universe wants you. Because it is inside you. The whole universal ocean of potential existence prior to this creation of the universe is throbbing in your heart, through every cell of yours, through every bloodstream and vein. Why do you think that you are a little body? This ignorance must be removed, avidya as it is called. Assert yourself. The whole potential of what I want to achieve is here. It is just now, and it is here. It is here and now, not tomorrow and not somewhere else. If this conviction is in you, the object what you are thinking of in your meditation will melt into liquid and enter into your bosom. Oh, you will be inundated. What I want has not only come near me, it has become me. It has entered into the pore of myself. You dance in ecstasy. Mystics dance in ecstasy. They are not crazy people. Because the whole thing is inside them. What they wanted as if it is external has melted down into the liquid of nectar of self-possession. They cannot contain this. All the saints, mystics, Mirabai, everybody, Tukaram, started dancing. You think there are some crazy people? Nothing of the kind. The whole cosmos is vibrating inside them. Who can contain it? Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to say, do you know the example? When the absolute enters you, what happens? It is like a mad elephant entering a little thatched hut. The thatched hut will broken to pieces. It will never exist afterwards. When the absolute enters you, we don't know what happens to you. That is why you are dancing at that time in ecstasy. So is the case with everyone who is able to imbibe this potential cosmic stuff, appearing as a little tiny object, a kind of murti, a lingam, a pattern, and something that you are worshipping in a temple, in your puja room. No, they are not in the puja room, they are not in the temple, they are everywhere. The everywhereness of the object is the only cue for you to attain success in your meditation. But you have doubts. No. There is no opponent in this world except doubt. Your conviction, ask and it shall be given. In the great saints say, ask and it shall be given. But your soul must ask, not your tongue and lip and all that. When that which is everywhere is speaking inside you, I want, and that which is everywhere must come to you. And now it must come, not tomorrow. God does not take time to come to you. Big officials take time to come to you. Because you say, come tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. It is immediate, just now. Eternal action. That is the capacity of even a little object of meditation, which you think as a tiny thing. What is there? So many years I am meditating, nothing comes out. How can something come out when you are basically cutting the ground under your feet by imagining that it is a utilitarian object and it has no connection with you? It is only an instrument. There are no instruments in this world. All are wonderful. Ashcharyavat kasyati pashyate ashcharyavat padati tathaiva janyam. Ascharyam. The Upanishad and the Bhagavad Gita call this Ashcharya, wonder. You cannot call it by any other name. This object is a wonder. You are a wonder. And the way you want it is also a wonder. One who can tell you all this is a wonder, and the person who can receive it is a wonder. Everything wonder, all wonder. The whole world is a wonder of the beauty of God. You say the world is made up of thorns, mosquitoes and snakes. Don't say like that. These are all something else masquerading in that form. The devil becomes the angel in 1 second if it wants. Provided the externality, which is the only devil, is abolished and it is melted down into universality. This is a little foundational preparation of your mind that is necessary before you sit for meditation. You will find that in the very beginning itself you feel happy. Happiness is the touchstone of success in meditation. If you see it's all aching here, aching there, what is there, I'm boring, how much time passed, you go that see, look at the watch, is it half an hour, 1 hour, let the meditation go, let me go for a walk. Wow, this will not work, this kind of thing. That which you want is just here in your hand. If this conviction is there, it is conviction, mumukshutva as they call it. That is what is going to bring you success. If you want a thing, it must come. The whole thing is there. All the qualifications are secondary. There is only one qualification. You want it. I want it and 100% I want it. It must come. Why should it not come? If you assert it, the whole world has to arrange itself and align itself in such a way that it must come at your feet. In the Chandogya Upanishad, in the 8th chapter, beautiful passages are there. When the soul attains this expanded mood, you things will be there. Whatever it is, the past, present and future will melt into the present and come here. You should not say, this is not possible for me, I am a poor man. No, you are not a poor man, you are a very valuable person. You are the child of immortality, Amartasya Putra, says the Upanishad. You are the son of the eternal nectar, Amartasya Putra. This is how the Upanishad calls you. It does not call you the poor son of a poor father. No. The eternal Father is represented in your eternal form, in the object of meditation, in the very process of your action. Even by hearing this, you must be immensely happy. Certain steps have to be taken. You must have some time to sit. When you are about to sit for meditation, other engagements must be set aside. Suppose you say, I have to catch a train after half an hour, then you should not do meditation at that time. Okay, you go, finish your work, then do it. Till tomorrow, I have no work. Then the mind will say, okay, let me sit. At least for another 6 hours I have no work. Okay, all right, you'll agree. But immediately you have got an assignment, then you should not sit for meditation. Your health is okay, and you have no ache in the body. You are satisfied for the time being. You have taken your bath, you feel fresh. The sun is rising in the east. You are facing it, seated in a fixed posture. You are taking a deep breath like this, and the energy of the sun through the air that pervades is entering into your nostrils. Like this, you breathe like this, expand your chest, and your lungs get expanded. Fresh air enters into you. Do a little bit of breathing. I am not telling you to do any kind of complicated pranayama. A little deep inhalation with an expanded body like that. Throw your arms like this. Hold it for a second. Do it 25 times, 30 times. Energy will enter into you. Then close your eyes and do this technique that I have just now explained to you. And see how long you can go on thinking like this. After a few minutes, if you find that it is tiring, the mind is not catching, stop the meditation. You do like this. Then again start. The same meditation like that. After 10-15 minutes, you say you are again tired. Get up, walk, you again sit in meditation. You feel drowsy, go inside the bathroom and splash your face with cold water, and then you will be refreshed. Sit again like this. Go on persisting, like the story of Robert Bruce. He was a Scottish soldier who was defeated so many times in war, and he was disappointed. He was sitting under a tree. What is the good of all this battle? Every time I am defeated. This is a poem, Robert Bruce. You must have heard in younger days. He was looking like this, disappointed, and you saw a spider was trying to climb up. It went a little bit, it fell down. It went up, again fell down. So many times it tried, little, it fell down. Finally, it touched the point. Oh, this is a lesson for me, he said. I have failed as many times as this animal, this spider has failed. He got up with a great conviction, I shall win, and he won victory. And the mind has to be drawn little by little, like the work done by an intelligent wife of a husband who was in the Tower of London or some tower. He was imprisoned in a tower, and she wanted that he should be released, but the authorities will not release him. They may even execute. So he was looking there far off, and she was looking what to do. She thought what to do. Very intelligent lady she was. She understood. Oh yes, some method is there. What she did was, he caught hold of a beetle crawling like this. It has got two tentacles like this. What she did was, she smeared honey at the end of these tentacles, and it started moving because of the smell of honey. It would lick it. But it cannot lick it because tentacles are projected outside. So it was moving further. To the tail of that little beetle, she tied a very fine silken thread, the weight of which the animal, the creeper, would not know. She let it like this on the wall of the tower. It was going like this little, because it wanted the honey. It was never ending, it going on like that. It reached the top. She told, catch hold of that silken thread. Then afterwards she tied a little white thread which you are using in office to pull it and the thread. Then afterwards he pulled a little sutri, then find a rope. Get down, he said. And he simply came down from there. He succeeded. This is one interesting thing. How intelligent this lady is to bring that man down. This is how you have to, this is also very terrible thing, this mind. It will not listen to you, whatever you do. All right, I have heard everything, but it will say, the but comes in the middle. I have got so many problems, I have got family, mother sick and all, anything, so many complaints will come. Let that be there, but you are going to get everything that you want. And don't you have the satisfaction of you are going to get what you want? Success is bound to come because the whole creation is the success of God's activity. Failure doesn't exist anywhere. Everything is beautiful. Always see beauty everywhere. Everywhere beautiful things. Everywhere is perfection. Everywhere grandeur. Everywhere the face of God is shining. Sarvataha panipadam tat. Sarvadotchi shiromukam. Sarvata shrutimaloke. Sarvam amritya drishtadi. What does Bhagavad Gita say? Sarvata panipadam tat. Where is God? Oh, how far? Brahmaloka, beyond, beyond, beyond. No. Sarvata panipadam. Everywhere the feet and the arms of God are spread out like this. Wherever you touch, you will find the finger of God, or the arm of God, or the feet of God. Sarvatotchi shiromukam. Everywhere eyes, like this. You are seeing walls and bricks. No, they are eyes of God and heads of God. Sahasra Shirsha Purusha, says the Purusha Sutta. Thousands of heads of your heads. Your heads are all part of the universal head only of their Purusha. The universal head is not somewhere else. These things, little things, the trees and mountains and rivers and what you are, everything they are heads of that being only. Only you are imagining that they are outside, you are here. This outsideness is a curse, must be removed from consciousness. So, feel confident. What I want is just near at hand. Kingdom of heaven is at hand. The great Christ mentioned. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and all this righteousness. All these things shall be added unto you. Ananya chintayanto mam yejana pariyupasati tesham nityabhayotanam yogakshamam mahamyam. It is the scriptural counterpart of this kingdom of heaven is within you. How is it possible? Kingdom is so big and you are so little. How is it possible? Yes, it is possible. Possible. With this conviction, look at this promise of Bhagavan Sri Krishna as an infinite being saying, "Cure yourself with me. It is my duty to take care of you." Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I will tell you another story. I will not bore you much. There was a poor Brahmin and believed in the value of this shloka. Everything will be given by God. No problem, no problem. He has promised, when I think of him, everything will come. But he was so poor. The wife and children were starving, begging. He used to go and beg and bring some rice, commodity, and he went around. One day he could get nothing. Till morning to evening he went. No, nothing of the kind. And next day the children were crying, the wife was cursing. They were all dying. We are perishing today. But anyhow, he said, what do I trust? I trust. The promise is there, promise is there. 2 days, even 3 days, he was drying up. And he was also collapsing. Third, he said, this promise is faulty. No, God also tells lies. No. Those days, there was no paper. The scriptures were written on palm leaves. So Gita was on palm leaf. He took a nail and struck that shloka like this. Tore it. This shloka is false. I am dying. Everybody is perishing here. And where is this promise? But he went away from here. He didn't want to sit also. After some time in the evening, the story goes, one young boy brought a huge bag of some commodity and threw it on the veranda of the house where the lady was inside. Hey, she said, my husband has brought so many rations here. Yes, yes. How? So much. Oh, how many bags? Oh, wonderful today. How you got it? But that tongue of that boy was bleeding and what has happened to you? Your husband is a very angry fellow. Because I was a little late, he tore my tongue. He said, what kind of idiot my husband is? Afterwards he came back. You got no sense. He said, You tore the tongue of that little boy with whom you have sent the ration. No, I have not said anything. No, I don't know anything. What are you talking? Here he looks. Oh, he cried like this, weeping like this. He cannot control himself. Oh God, what a sin I have committed by tearing your tongue. Oh, like this. This story of this Ananyas Chintayanto Mam, Yajana Parivasde, Tedam Nityabhayuktanam Yogakshavam. Ask and it shall be given. Remember this statement of Christ. The great master is telling. Do you think they are really bluffing you? Ask it from the bottom of your heart. The other soul will respond immediately. The counterpart. With this conviction, my dear boys, sit for meditation and let meditation in this sense described be your be all and end all and your ultimate blessing. Hari Om Tat Sat.